continues? What sort of events will we start seeing in this country if this continues? What is even the root cause of it? Why are we seeing security services embroiled in these matters? We also want to talk about the reform side of it. How do we fix it? What needs to be done? What is wrong with our systems that allows for this kind of impunity? And how do we fix these? I think the two best people to help us with this conversation are here with us. Professor Kwesi Aning, of course, needs no introduction whatsoever. He's a security analyst, a consultant, and of course a professor. And he's going to join us via Zoom shortly. Here in the studio, we have Timothy Anyidoho, another person who needs no introduction, really. He's a surveyor. He's the acting regional lands officer for Greater Accra. And it's good to have you back, Timothy.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right. Okay, look, let's get straight to it. Prof. Aning is joining via Zoom. I think we have him now. Prof, if you can hear me, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you so much for making the time. We know you are somewhere else right now, but we're glad you're able to join us. So maybe we start with the rather pressing security aspect of this thing. Prof, today, civilians can shoot soldiers in front of police stations. I'm sorry, but seriously, is this not the clearest indication that we have a security crisis on our hands because of land disputes?
First and foremost, let me extend my condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones. But this is going to get worse because we seem to take this as part of the way that land business is done. This is the way that patronage politics is done. This is the way that rent-seeking behavior must pan out. So that there's no real serious effort in engaging where we've come from and how we've landed where we are. And you can see that from, if we take a slightly historical perspective, we haven't gotten to where we are because you and I bought a piece of land, we are quarreling with somebody, we go and buy a gun, and off we go shooting people. Far from it. This has been a gradual development that represents the failure of our gun laws, of our stockpile management weaknesses, leakages in the system, and then closely related to that is the astronomical increment in the value of land, the poor status of our land administration system, and then the conflation of the value of land, weakening institutional processes, and to a certain extent, the politicization or the patron-client relationships that drives access to wealth and to property in Ghana. So if you look at almost every land-related case where extreme violence has been used, those who did that are either related or have a close connection to the state or to people who are located within the interstices of power. So in the particular case that I guess we are talking about, for an individual to proclaim himself to be royalty and a chief, because I think there are some contestations around that designation also. It challenges our traditional authorities and the processes and procedures around which somebody can be made a chief. That is number one. Number two, the National Security Ministry then quickly disowns this person, but apparently from the court papers, it shows that this guy is from the national or has some relationship Now, if we cast our minds back during the short inquiry relating to the Ayawaso West Wogon of the violence, there was this mobile phone repairer character who was also a national security operatives. So here we see first two national institutions that are bringing conflicting or conflicting stories. This is the same as the Ashwank case, where from the police prosecutor to the Attorney General's office to immigration, we didn't know whether Ashwank had left the country. And if you have the tape, you can play it back. When the president expressed his surprise, you can see upon scrummage shock on his face. Oh, but Chief, why are you saying this in public? Okay, so we are seeing a way in which those who manage the public affairs of this country are over time allowing things that ought not to happen to be happening. We've also seen, I think, if I've got it right, Canadian Japan praising some friend of his for his property being destroyed in Ajringano by some political forces. And it is this sense that I am connected, I am protected. Whatever you do, I can flout the law irrespective of what the courts are saying. That is giving people this authority to challenge the state. But let me make my final point here, Kodo. You see, when you take up arms against the uniformed services of a state, what you are doing is not just killing an individual soldier or police officer or customs officer. You are challenging the authority of the state to protect its citizens. And by law and by inference, the state will have to respond in a manner that serves as a deterrent. Over the past 3 to 4, 5 years, the Republic of Ghana is failing to demonstrate that it has the capacity to protect its law-abiding citizens who are paying taxes, who are acquiring property legitimately, and that, to a large extent, sows fear and creates societies of fear and instability.
Prof, I mean, you've really articulated this clearly, and it brings to mind the question: why is the state failing to respond decisively to those that challenge its authority to protect its law-abiding citizens? Well, I suppose part of the problem is that those who the state would use in protecting those citizens are involved in the lawlessness. Here I'm talking about the security services, particularly the police. This is where a party in the land dispute was running to for justice when they were shot. The police themselves often get attacked and shot in these land disputes. The police themselves come out in defense or protection of one party over the other in a matter that has not been settled. So how can the state respond when those authorized to carry out that response are part of the problem?
Yeah. So we haven't gotten here overnight. It's been a gradual process. First, dealing with issues around recruitment, around training, about promotion, disciplinary measures. So, I mean, I don't want to bore your listeners with the history. But if you go as far back to the 80s and the 90s, there have been quite a number of, commissions of inquiry into disciplinary issues within some of our institutions. And I want to just mention two of these commissions of inquiry. One is the Tibiru Commission of Inquiry, and the other is the Justice Archer Commission of Inquiry. That made far-reaching conclusions and suggestions and recommendations about issues of discipline, retooling, recentering, all sorts of things. Unfortunately, not even one, were followed up. So over time, we've allowed our institutions to decay and are not really, for quite a number of them, fit for purpose in terms of responding to and preventing and degrading the types of threats that the state is facing. So if you take levels of collusion, for example, it is not just the institution itself, that is the police institution, customs, the armed forces, but it's the inordinate interference by the political class. So if you take the Senya Breku case, where I think about 2 years ago, 3 police officers were ordered by some hotshot guy to go and fight over some land on his behalf in Senya Breku. And these people were arrested and beaten, and I think they barely escaped with their lives. The military then went in, arrested people. I think the courts then dealt with it. When those who govern the state, as you correctly say, undermine the institutions that should, over time, the shock and awe imagery of these institutions are undermined to such an extent that they are seen as legitimate targets in the struggle for power and in the struggle for the acquisition, either falsely or rightly, of goods of value. Now, yesterday I spoke and I said, look, if you go to Amanfro, there are 3 people there who are intimidating people. One is an Alaji. He's called Alaji. Everybody knows him, including the police. There's another guy called Red Moro, and then Black Moro, who calls himself warrant officer, but his real name is Umar Ali. Black Moro has seized lands, intimidated people, broken down their houses. This is about the 5th time I'm mentioning this guy's name. The shocking thing, Kojo, is that nobody has called me to say, look, Kwesi, but this is free intelligence that you are giving us. Can you give us more so we will follow up this case? So even in situations where we claim that we are doing intelligence-led policing, intelligence-led this, intelligence-led triple jump, even when the intelligence is provided, there is no follow-up. So the signal to those who want to use these guns and to intimidate the population is that you are on your own. And nobody is going to protect you. Then we are better connected. But it's going to get considerably worse. Because what we are seeing now, the escalation in the willingness by people to use guns, is that violence and the capacity to intimidate and to murder has become a currency. And as we head towards election 2024, which is a vitally crucial election, these people were transmuted from landguards to vigilantes. And now we are seeing their preparedness and their willingness to use firearms. I can almost guess that with the ease with which one can get access to explosives, that they will also be used. So we need to be careful. We are on a dangerous, slippery, downward slope to a major crisis that will make it. That will be very difficult to turn back if we don't stop it.
Prof, I want you to stay with us here in the studio. Timothy Anyidoho, he runs the Greater Accra region for the Lands Commission. Timothy, I mean, look, you must be tired. You must be tired of these conversations. But at the center of it is the system the legal system by which land must be administered. And you guys are in charge of that. What is it about that system? What is the deficiency in the system which allows for this Wild West mentality to prevail? Why is it that people can bypass the work you do and just go with a gun and take ownership of somebody's land?
Yes, so I had the privilege of reading comments by the National Security Minister recently, and his comments may be similar to what Prof puts together, that there's a security issue. So you hear the ownership, the base of our ownership is government owning quite a smaller chunk, say 20%, and the 80% being owned by families, clans, tools. Now, these family, clans, tools have a structure by which they administer the land. They themselves may not be able to determine where their land starts and ends. Among that group may be people claiming to lead the group at every particular time. So when you hear of a chieftaincy dispute somewhere, at the bottom of it may be a land question, because the people are tied to the land. Under the land administration project, somebody perceived this and started what we call the codification of customary law. So we could have codes to know when I enter your family home, I know who will be the chief next 2-3 years. Somewhere along the line, that fell off. If we don't know who will lead every family's tool, and there are disputes and there are misunderstandings, and like Prof says, somebody is a self-styled chief, that even is in dispute now, and he is selling land somewhere. That all ties back to us again. Half of the time, people are in court. We don't hear these disputes in rural areas, maybe relatively rural areas where pressure for land is not. And Prof speaks about the value of land. If the value is not high and the stakes are not high, you don't get a chance to pay people. So it's the urban issue and the complexity with who owns what. If we were like our French neighbors, where land is assimilated, owned by the state generally, then you can say those individual claims, people are in court today, there's an injunction here, there's something about family headship, there's something about stool. So now the administrator can only administer what he's permitted to register. If there's an injunction over the place, what do you do? So we also can, there's an extent to which we as actors for land administration can do. But the whole system, as again the legal system, the policing system, if you have a problem on the ground today, the person is likely to come to Lands Commission for a search. In our recent fee fixing, to respond to the cost of why security agencies complain that they have to pay, they have to get the applicants to play, we've waived off fees and said we are not even charging security agencies any fee, because we also have a role to play in ensuring that they get the information as quickly as possible to be able to resolve their matters on the ground. But what if you give the person the information and he ignores it, or decides that I am the the judge and the jury on the ground and I am ignoring what you have said, or I don't think your land title certificate itself is valid, when he has searches from Lands Commission confirming that. And I heard you say this morning about people interpreting judgments their own way. Somebody says, I have a judgment. He's gone onto the ground and he's jumping on people's land. The guy he's gone to, he's not even showed the person the outcome of the judgment. He says, I've got a judgment. I say, has he showed it to you? You say, no. You finally read it and see that the court said, atone tenancy to the person. That doesn't translate into jumping onto the land. So it's the way in which we administer. If I am on the ground and tomorrow you're a land guard in quotes and you come and you intimidate me, you threaten me today, the next day I see you eating with a policeman on the ground, or you look at me and you are in the same area, neighborhood, you put fear in me, you are still walking around. So if they keep catching them, as he's mentioned, 3 names he's mentioned, if they were caught, prosecuted, and they no more exist,
you know them too?
I've heard from Prof. So let me say that. But Prof has mentioned them, and we've heard these names. I've been in this studio when he mentioned the same names, because he has some land ownership in that area and understand the local dynamics of the area. If they are still walking around and they can intimidate you and look you in the face and say, I'll be back tomorrow, and they are back tomorrow, then how does the land administration structure assist you in doing that? And that is where the challenge
Timothy, when we were discussing the Land Act,
yes,
and you were here and you indicated that,
Now, if you engage in landguardism, you're going to be punished. And he said, this was the law that we were looking for.
Yes.
The law has been passed.
Yes.
And still,
it's getting worse.
Yes, so like Prof
says,
the vigilante was a reaction from something. The Land Act was a reaction from what we had seen. Section 12 can state it clearly. If you act violently through somebody and you yourself, both the financier or let's say the promoter and the person himself, if he's prosecuted, who does the prosecution? It is the police.
Yes.
So the police prosecutes you under that law. You are caught after, and mind you, it's a court case. It may go on for the next 2-3 years. No offense in this country is not bailable. He's granted a bail. He's walking around until he's put incarcerated. What do? So the law, and I say the solution by law will be what we call the general formula, the 1214-182 of Act 1036, which is where now the crime of landguardism, if you put it that way, just talks about protection of land, is now a crime where you can be prosecuted from between 5 to 15 years or from 10 to 15 years, depending on what acts you have done. Now, if you are caught and you are prosecuted for those crimes, you are not available anymore. This particular Kaswa incident, and my condolences to the family, is now murder. It's even moved from just a land issue to murder. And therefore, the stakes even are higher. The 14 is if every customary land area has its own record of what it has, what is given, what is given today, what is given tomorrow, then it reduces the double sale here, double sale there. The 182 will be if Land Commission is able to get everybody to have his interest registered by law. You appeal to people to come. You compel them. Then they are registering. Then there's a small parcel where we have misunderstanding. And that can stall us for years. Because I don't agree that land is yours. And land is so sentimental to people. And I understand it.
So in essence, that was not the law we were waiting for.
That was the law we're waiting for, but it is the enforcement. And I've heard you say this morning several times. Laws are good if we can enforce the laws in the manner in which they should. Lands Commission is administering, but it's not an enforcer. We have tried to appeal to the AG to see whether those prosecutorial powers we can look at them and then maybe sublet them to some other agent. But we don't know.
Talking of laws and reforms, and I'd be interested in both of your opinions on this actually. Talking of laws and reforms, you gave the example of our French neighbors,
yes,
right? Where pretty much you can't buy or sell any land without involvement of the state. Now here, land is owned mostly by families and stools and skins.
Yes.
Even though the state can't just come and take ownership of, well, they can, but we don't recommend that the state simply take ownership of all land in the country. Can the state not take control of land transactions?
Okay.
So can we not set things up so that no land can be bought or sold without the involvement of the state? Okay. So you are not just sitting back waiting after the process, then someone comes to register with you. But the process cannot happen without you.
Okay. So there are two interventions that we have done since our independence. That's why our forebears looked at stool land, for instance, where it looked at stool land is administered on behalf of a people. The Constitution says the Lands Commission grants you consent or concurrence for that transaction. So it has put Lands Commission in that transaction, because before you register, you need Lands Commission to have a consent or concurrence. Now the issue is who is the head of that stool or that family. Lands Commission is not to take control of the transaction, but to intervene at the time of registration. So that puts Lands Commission at a place where you are intervening in that transaction, but you are not initiating it, neither are you the one granting it. And that's why you say, we don't recommend the state to take over. However, where does the state intervene? And if the process where the laws allow the state to intervene is after the transaction has sort of crystallized and is in motion, then that puts the state at a place of just mere intervention.
That's the current situation.
Yes, that's the current situation.
Yeah.
If you want the state to be involved at the process of grants, then you are sort of putting the state in the shoe of the grantor. And what can the state do? For instance, searches, to give you your search quickly for you to know what to do when you are going to do your transaction. That again, the government can provide that service for you. But until we get to a place where we can document fully who owns what is the lineage, the the system of inheritance in those families, can the courts also be able to resolve the matters quickly for us? Because the courts can take 12 years, 10 years, 14 years. And all that, we need to wait until that determination is made. So it's a multifaceted. It falls beyond the Lands Commission as it stands.
Yeah.
You are looking at the court system, you are looking at the security system, and all actors. Yes.
Prof, I mean, I'd like to hear you on this as well. There is so much chaos in land administration in this country. Just so much, not just in what we are discussing, but even in the activity on the ground, the actual demarcation of land and, zoning. It's just all chaotic. It's whomever has the money or the strength does whatever they like. Is there any way of superimposing order over this chaos, or is it too late?
Well, Tim, it's good to see you and to hear you. It's not. It's not too late, but it's just that, you see, it is the mix of politics that has become the fulcrum around which this problem revolves. And I think history is quite important here. Probably Tim will remember this. At independence, particularly for the Northern Territories, all lands were vested in the state of Ghana. Until General Achampong, in his desperation to win the yes vote, decided that if the northern regions gave him a yes vote towards his unique government, land will revert to the 4 major ethnic groups against the interest of the 13 minority groups. So what we are discussing as an Accra problem is beginning to manifest in all the northern regions also, albeit at a lower level. So the elephant in the room right now is the quality of our politics. Now, if we go back to Kennedy Agyapong's statements the last couple of days about the destruction of this Nigerian property by people who are located within the interstices of power but have not been voted for by the people of Ghana, then it just shows you the scale of the problem. So we can have a land act, but it will be rubbished. We have Act 999, the Vigilante Act. Nobody respects it. We have rulings of the court. They are not respected. So far as we are talking property and high value goods, until we get a state with leaders who are saying that, look, it is the rule of law that must govern what we do. You and I will have this conversation until probably my grandchild will take over. But it's going to get more vicious, more violent. We are going to lose many more lives, and eventually the state will lose control. Because it will not just be about land. It will be about other ancillary interests of value, and eventually it will be a fight between the conglomeration of these groups against the few representatives of the state. Look, today we are talking land. We are not talking about Rosewood, the criminality and the violence relating to Rosewood. We are not talking about the criminal networks, both local and foreign, involved in the artisanal gold mining going on in Ghana, right? So there are pockets of criminalities, all using small arms and light weapons, all of them related to powerful people who are either covering up for them or colluding with them. We haven't crossed the T's and dotted the I's. But when we do, the Republic of Ghana will not be capable of withstanding the onslaught that these guys are going to on. We are facing an existential threat. But were we to get 10 different experts on all these issue areas, from fishing, rosewood, mining, illicit financial flows, small arms flows, and they all sat as a panel here, and we took our time to dot and cross the T's, the picture will not look good. We are a nation on a downward, dangerous, slippery slope.
Prof, is it conceivable, the way things are going, that at some point it will no longer be just about land, undeveloped land, that people will walk into fully developed homes as long as they are located in prime areas and just take over, as long as they have the brute force and, you know, they've bribed the right law enforcement officers? Could we conceivably start seeing that as well?
Well, I think it started already in two forms. One, I want to go back to Kennedy Ajapon's point about the destruction of this estate in Achengano by a political group. The second is when, and I'm here, I am happy that Tim is in the studio. The second is when your 99-year lease or 50-year lease is up. You know, I don't know what guarantees we have, but as landowners, if they tell you, look, that's it, you can remove your house and take it somewhere. I want my land back.
Wow.
The law may be giving us guarantees, but brute force that has started already is what is going to define all the. And Koyo, the people don't need to be corrupt. The level of force is such that, just as we've seen soldiers being killed, the police officers being killed, that everybody is going to say, but wait till be my case here. What does it benefit me when the people I seek to protect themselves are part of the problem? So this is about loyalty to the state. It's about this sense that when we wear this uniform, when we go to a conference with the Ghana flag in front of us like yours and our name, having the weight of the state behind us is no more worth the hassle. Then the picture that you have painted, that has already started, will get a dynamic of its own and threaten the state and our ability to resist the survival.
Wow. Timothy, I mean, you see, there's another thing. I mean, both of you have talked about it. The illogical multiplication of value of land in dollars that defies all economics. And I keep saying this, that today you might spend more to buy land in Oyarefa than you would spend to buy land in Manhattan. It doesn't make sense. And the value keeps increasing at a rate that, I mean, it's factored by nothing.
Yes.
Right? The dollar is not depreciating. So how is it that land that cost $14,000 10 years ago can cost $100,000 now? What has happened to the dollar in the past 10 years? It's the same land in the same Accra, or the same wherever, community 20, whatever. It's what is happening?
So
explain it to us.
So there's a theory for why prices. First of all, we are not in a price control market. So like everything, like cars, like everything, people set their prices just by their thinking. Now, because we don't have a complex transportation system that gets it easy for you to move from here to there to here, we all want to be at the center. So as long as we want to be at the center, the price is going to be exponential. It's not, and that's one of the theories. If we had urban pockets and we had decentralized offices and we had all that, it all feeds into the values that we see now. And once we don't have that complex connection, then you are always going to have prices going up higher. And to answer Prof's concern about the renewal of leases in the next 50 years, we've started experiencing that already since those who got their leases in the 50s. Since 1969, we changed foreigners to... It's happened already in 2019. So the Land Act in Section 50 saw that this will become a problem. So it guarantees renewal for the Ghanaian. As he said, then it will come to that guarantee. How do you enforce it? Luckily, the law says it should be at a reasonable cost, not free. And therefore, the courts will now be determining for us what reasonable is. If it's time to renew and I say 100,000 and you say, oh no, it can only be 50,000, then you must have your valuers, you must sit together and agree on a cost to renew. So at least this law seems to look forward and say you have a guarantee by law. As you said, now it will come to the enforcement of the law and how we'll make sure that, that.
Everybody wants to own land. This is why we are working. We want to own property. This idea that I can work my whole life, make money, buy land, and it's still not mine. No, I'm sorry, but that just can't stand. So what do I do? How do I avoid buying, litigation-prone land?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I've been here several times, and I always start with how we acquire what we acquire. I've heard Prof talk about hotspots. Once you go to an area to buy land, you have a sense of that there are challenges in an area. That's the first sign that you must go in the other direction, because it's investment that you are going to put in. Every other thing we purchase, whether it's a car, we take time to do a search to try to be sure that the chassis number is right. We are not buying a stolen car. It's the same to do with land. I always say, if those who purchase land have the patience to ensure that the seller has the right documentation, very soon it will become expensive not to register. Because I checked your documentation, your name doesn't appear. More often than not, many people would approach the Lands Commission or approach a professional to advise when the transaction has been concluded. And that's where most of our problems start. Also, there's a phenomenon in Accra that I have noticed in the urban areas, not the Accra, Kumasi, where once you buy the land and there's no immediate plans of developing, you are leaving the place bare. Land, you don't take it home, you leave it there. You don't visit there enough, so you allow for time to lapse. And then you give room for other people to make representations. And I always say, when I give this advice, I say it's an expensive way to buy land. But it's like now when you buy, you must have something in addition to put a presence on the land. Wallet, do something, so that you can have a presence there on a constant basis. For me, those are the 2-3 key things that we can tell anybody who approaches a place to buy land. And if people come contesting your ownership, don't just take the words of the person. They must be able to prove some documentation. And I've seen people living with land title certificates, legitimate certificates, where somebody just comes out of the blue, talks about some judgment, has no evidence of same, is giving his own interpretation to it, and the person is intimidated by that person. Rather than standing your ground and saying, I have a land title certificate, you go to the police, if they tell you, show it to them. If it's a court case, you find a way of enforcing your rights, rather than quickly recoiling and say, oh yes, the people came and say they got a judgment and suddenly you are panicking. So maybe for me, these are a few words I can say. And a few, as I said, the laws keep evolving. We have the Real Estate Agency Act 1047, which now says if a transaction is above 200,000, you need to register with the agency, meaning that they would be recording transactions also. That is some state intervention, and then we'll move forward.
Let me ask about this too. What about those who have gone through all this, bought land that they believed to have been, properly acquired, and did all their checks and everything. They paid for the land. Then someone turns up and says, no, you have to pay again.
Yes.
What do they do?
So I always say, once you give in once, the person is likely to find a new group. I advised some prominent person in this country just yesterday, acquired a property given to his son. His son goes onto the land and there's a challenge. The new group has come saying that they've gone some judgment. I said, have you seen the judgment? He said, no. I said, request for the judgment when you go to the police station. When they brought it, it had nothing to do with taking over the land. Now they are demanding the price of the land because they have gone to sell the land to some party. I said, don't pay a dime. Up till now, he's not paid a dime. He came to me yesterday. We are going through his processes. And I said, stand your ground. I know, Prof, they are weaker. Our institutions seem weaker. So the citizenry seem to be giving up on the state institutions. But when we do so, then we have nothing. So stand your ground. Once you begin to do, I just want my peace of mind. So I've given them for 40,000, 5,000, 10,000. Then they will keep going, split into 4 groups. Tomorrow is led by you, Kojo. Next time is led by Winston. The last time is led by Timothy to take money from you. So that's the advice I can give as much as possible. We are trying to collaborate with the police to get more education because they are the first point of call anytime a dispute arises. Because it will involve violence, it will involve intimidation, it will involve some misunderstanding. And just an advice to our friends, the police, familiarity in a local area can be a risk. So because you have been stationed there, if you try to be familiar with those there, sometimes resolving issues become a problem. So just an advice that we can give to them. So,
well, Prof, Timothy advises us that, look, stand your ground. Don't give in to intimidation. But at some point, intimidation becomes violence. And if you're not lucky, you get shot. If you are even less fortunate, you get shot in front of a police station. So the police can't seem to protect you. What can you do to protect yourself? At what point does your land dispute become a danger to your life? And how do you stay safe?
Well, almost all lands in urban areas now pose an existential threat to the individual or groups who have bought. That's number one. Number two, because the institutions are weak, but I'm an institutionalist person, so we need to find a way to strengthen the institution. But I think I agree with Tim. Don't pay a penny, but please don't go and buy a gun yourself. That is one thing that no one should do. Because if you own a gun, even if you've been trained how to use it, you may not be able to put it in a gun safe at home. Your son, your grandson, somebody else might have access to it. So please don't do that. The way to ensure that we extract violence, guns, intimidation out of society is that when citizens provide intelligence about individuals who are criminals and part of criminal networks like Black Moro or Umaru Ali alias warrant officer, the Ghana Armed Forces and the Ghana Police Service must say, who are these people? Can you provide us with further information? Because if Black Moro, Red Moro, Alaji are picked in Amanfro and people see they've been picked and dealt with quickly because they've broken down people's homes, they are threatening people, that will send a signal to the community that, look, you can be protected. Okay, that the state is willing and prepared to protect you. That serves as a deterrent. Because these stories are going to spread. That, look, now when people have the evidence and they give it to the police and to the military, they will come for you. They will make sure there's a fast track. And Tim, please correct me. I think there's a fast track for land cases or something.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to use our institutions to let them work for us. Otherwise, people are not going to invest. People are not going to see us as a credible partner in investment for the future. So it can be done. It must be done. But we don't have time because we are on this downward slope. that I have been talking about. And please, those with connections and power, stop abusing it. Because it's ordinary people that you come to always seeking for that mandate. Don't use that mandate against them when it is given to you.
Prof, I want to thank you and Timothy very much for your time with us this morning. It's very sound advice you've given us, and I know that those who have heard will certainly be more cautious and increase their chances of surviving the purchase of land. I mean, just imagine, to work so hard, get yourself a piece of this beautiful country, only for some shade of Muru to come and claim it at the point of a gun. I mean, we can't live like this. So I certainly hope this is the beginning of a process that will lead to a safer, more reliable, land administration system. We all need it in order for democracy, capitalism to thrive in this country. These things must work. So once again, thank you both. Professor Kwesi Aning, of course, is a security consultant, and Timothy Anyidoho is in charge of the Greater Accra region for the Lands Commission. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you very much.